Welcome to this little mini event, just a casual talk about confidence as a business owner, in particular as women. It's a theme that I come across a lot when I talk with women. Hi, Elizabeth. And we're just gonna keep it very casual, very easy today. It's a conversation. So I wanted to share a story first. An experience that I had, and then open it up to stories from you if you want, and to thoughts about women in leadership and women in business. So today the theme is confidence. So we're going to have a couple of people showing up as we go through, but that's fine. Welcome to everyone. So I wanted to share a story that kind of shaped my mission toward women's empowerment. It happened a long time ago when I was in my early 20s, and I was living in North Carolina, in the mountains, and there was a historic inn with a huge barn, and then acres and acres and acres of farmland and gardens. And so that's what I managed. And I'd been an herbalist and gardener for a few years. I was already managing a tiny little herbal company called Sweet Sicily Herbs, and I did retail and wholesale. It was very, very cute. And for this inn, I was growing a variety of crops. So I was growing rhubarb and snap peas and potatoes and herbs and flowers, and it was lovely. So one sunny afternoon, I noticed that on the big trellis that we had built for the green beans, way down in the flat part of the valley, that part of the farm, all the green beans were ready. And so I was excited. And so I went and I got this huge wicker basket out of the barn, and I harvested all the ready green beans. So like thousands of green beans. And I filled this giant basket, and I lugged it back across the farm, through the dirt, and across the road to the main building. And I proudly carried this huge basket of green beans into the kitchen of this bed and breakfast inn, and knocked off the soil off my boots, came in the kitchen, thumped this heavy basket on the table, and, was giving it to the cook. I don't know what I thought he was going to do with all these green beans. I didn't really think about it. I just harvested it. So the cook, he was not a chef, but he was this local redneck guy. He was a hillbilly. He worked for a local mechanic. This was just an extra job for him. He was wearing this dirty wife beater, sleeveless shirt, old jeans, and he was just the guy that they hired to work in the kitchen. And I was in my early 20s. I was fit. I was suntanned. I'd been out in the garden all season. But I was completely naive. I didn't have an ounce of experience behind me in dealing with people or the real world in general. So the cook eyes this basket of green beans, and I thought I had done a good job. Look at this incredible harvest. But instead of thanking me or saying, sure, just put that there, or great, that'll be wonderful for dinner, any of that, instead, this guy grabs a huge carving knife, and he bolts from behind his counter in the kitchen, and he grabs me and he shoves me up against the wall, and he holds the knife in front of my face and starts screaming at me. And he's screaming like, what the hell am I supposed to do with all this? It's too much. I can't use this effing much. What is all this? And he's holding this knife right at my face. And I was totally astonished. I was petrified. I had no idea what to do. I had no words. I didn't have any plan for how to deal with something of this magnitude. I'd never experienced any sort of abuse or fright like this from another person. So the owners rushed into the kitchen. They were two middle-aged women who ran the B&B, and they separated us, and they told him to go calm down, and he put the knife down and he left. So that was the end of it. But he wasn't fired. He wasn't even reprimanded. These two middle-aged women were just as bewildered as I was. They didn't have the experience or the confidence, same as me. They had no idea how to deal with not only an employee being discounted or dismissed, but abused or attacked or threatened. They didn't know what to do. And they had a business to run. And here's this very volatile man who could have sabotaged their business probably. And so they didn't do anything. So I had this massive realization. I realized in that moment, in what I call, looking back on it now, I call it the green bean elegy, Mr. Deliverance with his knife, that me picking all those green beans was stupid, but it wasn't the real problem. The real problems were that I was not prepared. I was surprisingly naive. I had not planned. There had been no communication in advance from any sort of team, my employers, the kitchen staff. There was no team in place, really. I was not empowered to make decisions, and I had not been properly trained. And most importantly, I had failed to understand just how comfortable some men were, not all, of course, but some men were comfortable treating women poorly, and how natural it comes to some men to dismiss and discount a woman's presence, her ideas, her intention, her vision. So obviously his reaction was overstated. It was completely uncalled for. But to him, I had no business being in that kitchen. And when I thought about it later, that term, no business, really stuck with me, because to realize that a man believed I had nothing to contribute was really unnerving. And at that point, I didn't have a lot. I was young, I was inexperienced, but still, I deserved respect. And I learned later, looking back on this, that just a few years before this happened, and I don't know if some of you are familiar with this, but in 1988, which was the year I graduated from high school, women had a profound shift in their march toward equity, basically. In 1988, the Women's Business Ownership Act was passed by the federal government. And basically what that did was it told states that they had to stop requiring women who were pursuing a bank loan for their businesses to get it co-signed by either their husband or their son. So any woman who was seeking capital for her business, if she pursued a bank loan, she had to get it co-signed by a man, or she wasn't allowed to get funding. So that was just the year I graduated high school in 1988. And since then, in some ways, we've come a long way. In other ways, we kind of haven't. And even in 2017, which was just 6 years ago, female founders only received 2% of all venture capital that was handed out. 98% went to men. So it's a long road, and the point behind it is there are business lessons here in confidence, and I think confidence applies to a lot of different aspects of our lives. That if we empower ourselves with confidence, and we also teach the other women around us to do a certain number of things. And I've got a list here that I want to share. So first of all, we need to teach ourselves and the women around us how to let other people know what you need. If you need training, if you need space, if you need financial capital, whatever it is, if you need somebody to stick up for you because something happens, you need to teach other people what you need. You need to speak up on your own behalf, overcome shyness. And that's a big part of being naive and young, is a lot of young girls are just shy. And how to not be so polite. That's one thing I've started learning as I get older, is being polite is a disservice to yourself in many ways. Of course, you want to be courteous and kind, but to be overly polite, to be solicitous, to not stand up for yourself is a disservice to yourself. We need to teach ourselves and the women around us how to take charge of our destinies, how to be a leader, especially how to contribute plainly and openly. And that's a big one in business, because a lot of women, I've heard so many stories of women who contribute. They do research, they are scientists, they contribute skills and knowledge, but it's dismissed, or it's discounted, or it's even stolen by other people. So if we do this plainly and openly, if we really are very clear, this is my contribution, then that gives us a head head start in being accepted and respected. We need to teach young women how to shape communication channels and processes. So for instance, thinking about the green bean elegy, if I had talked with my employers, if we had had a conversation about core values or what's important, what's expected, if it had been a team conversation with all the kitchen staff, if that kind of culture had been cultivated, I don't think this incident would have happened. Or if it still happened, it would have been dealt with differently. We need to teach other women how to react when your ideas are dismissed or discounted because you're female. Sometimes it comes across as such a surprise or a shock, or we're stunned that we don't react. And instead, we need to be prepared. That's a type of confidence, being prepared and knowing that your reaction to something negative will be a positive thing, will lead to a better outcome. We need to teach others and ourselves how to point out mansplaining or harassment when it happens. In fact, it just happened to me a couple of nights ago. I was talking with a friend at an event, a man, and he asked me, so what am I working on these days? And I told him I'm launching a women's entrepreneur network. And he looked at me, he said, aren't there already a million of those? And I said, well, there are a number, sure, and they all have particular benefits or audiences, and they contribute in their own special ways. And I said, a lot of women feel isolated or alone when they're running their businesses, and so this is a nice way for women to connect. And he looked at me, he said, but do women really feel alone? And it really took me back, and I was not prepared. I didn't know what to say to him. And so it just ended very awkwardly. So we can't necessarily change what's coming at us from other people. It's going to come, but we can prepare ourselves to have a rejoinder, or how we're going to compose ourselves, or what our value is, whether we react or not. What is it that we stand for? How are we as women and business owners going to move forward in any situation? And mostly, I think we need to teach ourselves and other women how to be confident that a strong, clear reaction is the right thing, and confident that being polite or that not being polite is sometimes the right thing, and that speaking up and organizing empowerment for yourself and other women in advance will lead to positive action. So basically, I think it comes down to confidence is an advanced thinking, an advanced act. It's something that comes before you really need it. You need to develop confidence. We all need to develop confidence, organizing, planning, values, strategy in advance, because when the time comes and you need it, you have to have it. If you don't have confidence, then you're going to falter. You're going to not be sure what your next step is. Perhaps you'll miss out on an opportunity. So thinking in advance, which means planning, preparing, educating, training, I think that is one of the best ways to lead women toward confidence in their personal lives as well as their professional lives. So those are my thoughts on confidence. I don't think confidence is just being able to stand up and have faith in yourself. I think it takes a lot more than that. I think it takes support from other women and men. I think men need to be part of this conversation as well. How do we support each other? But it takes planning, and it takes being prepared, thinking in advance, building a team, talking about things that are uncomfortable in advance, so that when something happens, everyone is prepared to build equity and comfort and come to a solution. So for me, that's what confidence means. And I want to open it up to your thoughts, any stories or experiences that you guys want to share, or just what are your thoughts on confidence for business women or women in general of all ages, because it affects everybody from the time you're a kid to an elderly person, confidence in how you're treated by others throughout your life is an ongoing, I don't want to say issue or challenge, but it's a topic, definitely. Oh,
Hi.
Aminga.
I think I would just like to, there's a lot wafting through my mind right now after hearing about this experience that you had with this man in this kitchen. And it reminds me of an experience I had with an employee at my restaurant. And I won't get into all of that, but it just brings up some things. And then in relation to what you're saying about preparation, I think I would add to that part of the preparation from my own personal experience is also like doing really deep inner work around healing traumas, healing from traumas that you've had from such experiences as this in your life. With men, for example, abusive situations, so that it's not only like preparing on this level that you're talking about, but also coming from a place of just sort of having faced some of the experiences that you've had and done some work around deep healing so that you can come just really knowing actually where you're coming from. Like in that moment when you're dealing with that man, I don't know what your own personal experience was, but if you had previous experiences of abuse or something, that really could have informed how you reacted to that.
Whether you shut down, whether you explode, whether you take it internally and it depresses you, there's so many different responses you could have. And I look back on that one and I think if my employers, those two women, had reacted differently, if they had taken charge and said, that's not what we do here, that's unacceptable. We don't treat each other that way. We're going to put in a code of conduct immediately, because none of that existed. If they had acted in that way, that would have been an empowering response for me. You know, as an employer myself in the future, how should I go about this, and how do I want my business run? You know,
and even collectively, historically, as women, you know, you can just picture where these women are coming from, a lifetime of experiences, and you know, even before that, to put them in a situation where they have to stand up to an abusive, aggressive man. That takes also that deep confidence also, of having sort of faced that the history of the relationship between men and women, just in this particular instance.
Thank you, Holly. There's been so much said, and you touched so many places within me that I'm going to trust that however wants to be shared in this moment will come through for all of us. To give some background, I know Holly from the years on the vineyard that I lived there for 15 years, which were some of the most special years of my life. And at that point in my life, I'm aware my life has always been soul driven. And at that point, I was living from a very confident place in my soul, even though my soul was not fully integrated with my personality. And because of that, my ability to grow my visions for good on this planet have gone through a waving experience. So with this conversation about confidence comes the clarity that at this point of my journey, and I'm now going to add, I loved how you colored in your span, Holly, for us of experience. So when you graduated high school in 88, I graduated high school in 76. And in 1980, I was in New York City as a CPA for a big 8 firm, living pretty disconnected from my heart and soul, but very successful in the business world. And by 88, all of that was behind me. And I was ironically developing business plans for women business owners in New York City in the food industry.
Oh, wow.
And when Holly and I met, I was a private chef for the rich and famous, which is what supported me doing the work of my heart. And what's interesting about you sharing, and I hope if I'm talking too much and too long, please just stop me. So as soon as you started going into your story, Holly, and bringing those green beans into the kitchen and that man showing up with a knife, I'm very aware that for many who work in the kitchen, abuse is a part of our life. And it's very easy to be in those environments because it's what you know. And in that journey that my soul-driven path has taken, I am now really integrating what's been in the shadow of that personal woundedness, but really the women, what you've also talked to, this male-female relationship. And how do we, in birthing what wants to come through us individually and collectively, go through this process? And I love some of what you shared, Holly. I found it incredibly empowering. I am aware. I moved away from the vineyard because I didn't know how to afford to stay there. And what I've been learning since I left there has not been an easy path. But that, I think, is part of how we help each other too, is how do we go through those darker times and show up for each other? And you really spoke directly to that. I really heard you talk about speaking our needs. So I think one of my needs is getting comfortable. I'm pretty long-winded right now, but getting to the essence of my story, because I know there's some kernels of wisdom. And I know there's some things that want to come through me. And I don't mean in what I want to birth in the world, but this journey that I'm very, my connection to nature is profound. I am a high sensory person. I'm understanding how many women business owners are because we live in the world differently. So anyway, I just think this conversation of confidence is so critical, and it's really helping me find my confidence again, which I've been seriously successful, like ridiculously successful, but it was never about money for me. And because of that, I'm experiencing the injustice in our world, not just in the injustice with men and women, but between those that have and those that don't have. So this is where I really want to step into the tribe of supporting women again. And I just feel so grateful, Holly, that you are birthing this now. And I'm so blessed to be here. I feel very, very blessed. So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you're here, Elizabeth. Really. Yeah, when I met you, you were a chef, and I remember it was all, we would go on herb walks, and it was culinary herbs and edible herbs and the food and the preparing meals. And it's funny, it almost seems like a lifetime ago, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, what you said about so basically the confidence piece for me is I'm realizing that in my experience, I don't feel confident when I'm surprised, when something comes out of nowhere, when there's something I don't expect. If somebody says something or does something, or I'm realizing that I have to think ahead. I have to be proactive. I have to imagine scenarios in advance, even before I go into an event or have a meeting with a client or something, is to prepare myself so that I can feel confident that my response or my reaction or my plan or my goal is the right thing, both for that person and for me, and that I'm not left just fumbling and wondering, what should I say now? That confidence comes from advanced planning. And I also think that advanced planning is best facilitated by other supportive people. So mentors, coaches, friends, your sister of your heart, that kind of thing. When those people can really reach out to you and say, let's think this through, let's work it out, let's be prepared. That can boost a person's confidence tremendously. So when the time comes, they're ready, they're capable, they're fresh, they're strong in a position knowing this is who I am and this is what I stand for.
So when I listen to you talk about that, it's like everything that's been shared today is just, it hits. Like, I think it just hits. And I was thinking about this since I saw the link for this meeting. I was thinking about confidence because I realized that there are certain moments where it plays a part and certain moments where it doesn't. And after giving it a lot of thought, I was really coming to the conclusion that for me, having a very strong sense of self, a strong sense in what I'm doing, knowing where I'm coming from is a huge part of that. And it's about identifying the moments where my confidence wavers. So in certain moments I am really confident and I do feel prepared and I do feel ready. And in the moments I'm caught off guard with something, if I don't have that strong sense of self, I will get like fumbled and caught up and struggle. And I think I've learned a lot through that process and have maneuvered it. But when it comes to business and being a female in business and seeing what you're facing ahead of time, I've been working on identifying moments where my confidence is not so strong. And a very, very big one is where my confidence meets imposter syndrome. That's huge for me. And that's been something that I've been working on a lot. And I think that a lot of what you guys touched on today are factors that I haven't considered before that would relate to imposter syndrome, like why I feel that way sometimes or have that emotions come up around that. So I'm giving it a lot of thought, but I'm really grateful that this is happening and that people are sharing, because regardless of if you're coming from a female moment where you're dealing with a man in a kitchen who's doing what he did, versus you have deep healing work to do, versus you had to change your journey because your perspective and who you are wasn't aligned. Like those are all factors that play for me, that it all comes down to the same thing. Like, how do you connect and how do you move forward and how do you do this? And so I just wanted to say thank you for everyone who's sharing, and thank you for doing that and bringing this forward, because just sitting here, it's like the way that it hits and how you start to feel what comes up is just huge, and it's a lot. So thanks.
I appreciate that. Yeah, imposter syndrome is a big one. When we feel that we're not deserving or worthy or real or authentic or any of those adjectives, but we are. And that's what we have to recognize, is we are where we are in the moment. Here we are. We have everything behind us that's gotten us here to this moment, and it's real and it's authentic. And it might not be the same as somebody else's who claims to be in the same expertise or to be able to do the same things or whatever, the same job title, the same role, the same pursuit, whatever. But we are uniquely ourselves with our unique history and our experience, and we have to be able to draw on that and celebrate it. We've been trained that your credentials are what matters, and the letters behind your name are what matters. And really, it's your experience, your perspective, the way you treat other people, the way you treat yourself. I think all of that is so key in business, and it's easy to forget. I have a to-do, a next action item based on our conversation. Yeah, Elizabeth.
Can I add something else?
Yeah.
So, in hindsight, advice I would have given to my younger self, and I understand how my people-pleasing ways came about. But I'm a over-the-top planner and organizer and visionary. So what Holly is talking about is something that has been one of my set of skills that has brought success, but I wasn't really good around saying yes and no. I definitely said yes too much because there were so many things that tugged at my heartstrings that seemed in alignment with what I wanted to do. And then I wouldn't be realistic about what I could do. So it would fuel this deeper self-sabotaging ways, which would undermine my own self-care, which would then feed into my confidence. So learning that balance about, can I really do this? And using that skill that Holly's talking about in forward-thinking planning, like I am so much better now at pausing. Like we live in a world that moves so fast that people want answers right away. And I am really practicing slowing down so I can get clear about what I am saying yes and no to. Because then that helps so much with the confidence, because if I've said yes to it, I'm like really way more confident now. Anyway, I don't know if that shed some light, but I know that that would have been definitely at this juncture, when I think back, one of my top 3 things I would have said to my younger self.
Guiding your younger self, going back in time, what would you advise your younger self to do? Either more of, or differently, or not at all, or something, that could be a fun topic of conversation for one of our upcoming gatherings. I would like to encourage all of us, based on this, to do 2 things. One is to recognize in the next, say, week, a time where you really need to stand up more for yourself and clearly communicate to someone else what you need or what's important or what you're contributing, and just note it in your head. That's a point where I need to say this, or go ahead and say it out loud if you recognize it in the moment. And then the other thing is, when you see another woman not standing up for herself the way she should, either point it out or help her, jump in and stand up for her. I think we see little vignettes happen all the time where we think she should have done this, or that's too bad, or what a shame she didn't stand up for herself, and just maybe take it upon ourselves in the next week or 2, if we happen to notice somebody going through something like that, to just step in and be her voice for her or with her. I'm actually going away to a wedding this weekend in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I'm thinking about this now, as a little bit of homework for this next week. It'll probably be, I just might have an opportunity to use that, and to do it, because I'll be around a lot of young people, and those types of events might come up. So I'm looking forward to being aware, and being ready to act and support. I think I would tell my younger self, don't be so nice. Yeah, I was a people pleaser. Like you said, I was very affirmative, going with the flow. I didn't get into a lot of trouble. I didn't do stupid stuff like drugs and put myself in awful situations, but I didn't stand up for myself very much either. And looking back, I would just tell myself, probably get a little bit more of a backbone, maybe. I've developed that over the years, especially running businesses. It's been a good training exercise in being strong. But when I was younger, especially as a teenager, I didn't have that. I actually had a couple of women who kind of took me under their wings and mentored me, which was huge. It made a world of difference to me. One in particular, Janice, she was constantly telling me, identify yourself, stand up for yourself, in a really nice, loving way. She would kind of jump into conversations or situations and say, you deserve better. You deserve the best, make sure you get it. So that was really empowering. I'm realizing that as we go forward, these kind of talks are going to be so valuable. And I'm really, really looking forward to this type of interaction and engagement with all of you and with other women. It makes my heart soar. Well, thank you. And I hope you all have lovely weekends. And get out and enjoy the weather. Here it is a whopping 70 degrees and no humidity, so it feels wonderful. So I wish you all the best. Have lovely weekends. Empowerment and confidence to you all and to the women that you connect with in your lives. And I'll see you next time.